welcome or welcome back to my channel. I am Christy. I am so glad that you're here. In today's video, I am continuing a little series that I've started for the year, which is sharing the books that I have read for each quarter of the year, if that makes sense. The first one that I did was January through March. Yeah, January through March, quarters, Christy. Math is hard. January through March, I will link it above. So this video is going to be the books that I read April through June, which, spoiler alert, was a much shorter list. I am still doing pretty well on my reading challenge. I think that I am 4 books ahead of schedule. Hold on. Yes, I am still 4 books ahead of schedule, but that's just because I read a lot of books in the first 3 months of the year. I think in April through June, I only read 4 books. So I'm gonna share those with you today, share my thoughts with you. A side note, I'm sorry if I sound super congested. My allergies are off the chain right now, but I really wanted to get this filmed. I felt like the first video in this series about books didn't get a ton of traction on my channel, probably because it's not my usual type of content, but I wanted to continue it because I did feel like quite a few people who regularly watch my channel watched that video, and we had some awesome discussions in the comments. So I would love to know your book recommendations. If you've read anything good this year so far, please leave it in the comments. I would love to read it as well. I'm always looking for book recommendations, so leave those below. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do so below. Really does help me out. And I guess let's start talking about books. The first book that I finished in April was Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, the author of Eat, Pray, Love, and a bunch of other books. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, which kind of shocked me in the end, and I will tell you why. I have a lot of thoughts on this book. The general premise of this book is how to live a creative life and how to not be afraid of living a creative life. I feel like this could look different for a lot of different people. We all have different aspirations, different creative interests. It can be something different for everybody to live a creative life. And I feel like this book does a really good job of approaching it with that mindset. A lot of this book talks about the nature of inspiration. It talks about looking for joy and creativity in our day-to-day life. And I will be honest, at first when I started reading this, I was not into it at all. So the book is divided into sections, starting with courage, enchantment, permission, persistence, ending with trust, and then divinity. And I think that the reason why at first I was not into this book is because I just felt like the first few chapters, especially the first 2 chapters, really didn't apply to where I am at in my journey with creativity and creative learning. So at first I was kind of I don't really feel like this book is really speaking to me. But then as I got to permission and persistence, then I was like, wow. So much of what she's saying here really resonates and is a great reminder for how I want to live my life and how I want to pursue things going forward. I think what I came to realize with this book once I started reading more and once I finished it was that this book is truly for everyone. You might not be in the phase of creative living where you don't have the courage to do it. That's kind of how I feel. As I was starting the book, I was like, I don't feel afraid to pursue the things that I want to do, but it was more once I got to giving myself permission and having persistence in that, those were the things that I felt like I needed to hear. Whereas probably there's a ton of people out there who need to hear the courage part, who need to hear don't be afraid to take a risk, don't be afraid to take a chance, have the courage to try new things and live creatively and figure out what that looks like for you. I feel like she did a really good job of making this book applicable for anybody regardless of what stage they're in the creative process and pursuing a creative life. I am notoriously bad at finishing nonfiction books. I often give up halfway through because I get bored, and I am so glad that I stuck it out with this one because I ended up getting a lot out of the book. As you can see, I ended up bookmarking a ton of the second half of the book, whereas the first half really did not speak to me much at all. So I'm really glad that I stuck it out because I ended up really enjoying this book. Anybody really could benefit from reading this. It doesn't really matter if you are creative in a traditional sense or not, or if that's how you view yourself. I highly recommend reading this book. The next book that I read was The Survivors by Jane Harper. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I really liked this book. This is not my first time reading a Jane Harper book. I also have read a book called The Dry by her, and its sequel, which is called Force of Nature. This is a standalone book. The Dry is phenomenal. You should read that if you're into like a mystery thriller situation. The Dry is such a good book. But this is a different set of characters. Jane Harper is an incredible writer. She does such a good job at writing her atmosphere and her setting. Her books all take place in Australia or in that general region. And it's so fun to read books in that setting just because it's so different from here and what I know. It is a mystery thriller, it is a murder mystery, and it is so good. The twist at the end, I was shooketh to my core. I did not see it coming at all. So I highly recommend this book, especially if you like books that take place in other places. If you like a mystery, if you like a thriller, highly recommend this. I feel like the characters are good. Probably not as developed as the characters in The Dry, but I did still really enjoy this book. Solid 4 out of 5. I love a good mystery. Okay, the next book that I read was The Last House Guest by Megan Miranda. She has written a ton of mystery thrillers. This was my first one that I've ever read by her. I think that her best known one is All the Missing Girls, I think, which I definitely want to pick up to read that. I actually got this from like the free little library box in my neighborhood. Love that. This is also a like little whodunit mystery thriller. It's a story of a girl who lives in a small town in Maine, and it's a very like tourism driven town. So a lot of people come from New York City in the summer to stay there, and this local girl becomes best friends with this like wealthy New York City girl who comes for the summer. And then that girl, the New York City girl, ends up, well, murdered, suicide. You will see how it plays out. And basically the local girl wants to figure out what happened to her. I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. I always love a mystery, as you guys know. I really liked the mystery aspect of this. There was like a little creepy aspect, which I really liked. The twist at the end, I did not see coming. The reason that I did not give this 4 stars and only gave it 3 is because I felt like the characters were really not that well developed. Even the main character, Avery, who is like the narrator, the main person, the entire book, I felt like she was kind of underdeveloped. And I also felt like the storyline brought up a lot of things about her friendship with, what's her name? Sadie. Sadie's the girl who dies. Her friendship with Sadie, they bring up all these points about it, and just these little things that I feel like never really get resolved or answered, and that kind of irks me. But I did enjoy the book as a whole. I enjoy most mysteries, and I liked that I didn't see the ending coming, but I will say the character development was kind of lacking in this one. So 3 out of 5 stars. I will say, I want to get the book by her that everyone really loves. Again, I think it's called All the Missing Girls. I might pick that up this weekend. We'll see. The last book that I read between April and June was Luster. This is by Raven Leilani. I think I saw this at first because somebody that I follow on Instagram was reading it, and they said it was really good, and the cover was just, I don't know, enticing to me. Like, I don't know, it just looked good. I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. This is a very, I wouldn't say coming of age. I feel like it's a step above that. The main character, Edie, is in her 20s, and a lot of this story is her dealing with past trauma while she's currently living in an outrageous situation, which is she is like working this job that she's like on the brink of losing, really struggling to get by financially, and she ends up meeting on a dating app this man who is in an open marriage, and she ends up starting to see him, but then also kind of gets involved with his family, and it is wild. Some things in this book are a little dark. I will give like a trigger warning for that. There is like some like light sexual violence happening in this book. There's a lot of like, there's actually like a lot of dark storylines actually. Like it's a darker story, but also like weirdly like kind of a sexy story in some capacity. And I just feel like it is Edie's story of her coming to terms with her own talent, the things that she wants, facing her past and current trauma head on. And it's a really good book. I really enjoyed it. After I read it, I didn't start anything else because I was like, I just need to sit with that for a while, which is why this is the last book that I read in June. I have not started anything since, but that is going to change. I'm going to start a new book soon. But anyway, this was a very good book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, so I highly recommend picking this one up. But just keep in mind there is some darker content in this, so just a heads up. Okay, I just got so confused, you guys. I am such a dork. I read 5 books in April through June. I just didn't have the other one in this pile, but I was looking at my Goodreads, like where I keep track of all the books I've read. I read 5 books, not 4. I just forgot about the other one. I don't know how, because it was like my favorite one that I read. Wow, okay. I don't know where the book is. Did I maybe I lent it to somebody. I might have let somebody borrow it, but I'll put a picture here. Oh, put a picture here. It is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. So in my first video about books, the first quarter of this month, I read my first Emily Henry book, People We Meet on Vacation. And I liked that so much that I decided to pick up Book Lovers by her. You guys, I liked it even more. It was so good. I literally gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. Iconic behavior. I absolutely loved it. It was so cute. It was so good. It was a very enemies to lovers kind of trope, which I eat up. I am absolutely obsessed with that. It is such a good story. The premise is that this girl, what's her name? Nora, I think, in the book. She is a book editor and she lives in New York City. And the whole idea is that, you know, normally a common trope of a main character in like a Hallmark movie or a romance book is like the girl is always like the bubbly girl next door, and like she's like a baker, or she like owns her own small business in a small town, and she's like sweet and funny and bubbly and nice, and a guy from the city always comes to visit and falls in love with her, and then goes back to the city, breaks up with his like cold-hearted city girlfriend to go be with like his small town cutie girl. Well, the premise is that Nora, the main character in this book, is not the small town girl next door. She is the girlfriend that gets broken up with. That's like her persona. So it is such a good book. There's like a sister element to the story, and then there's like the enemies to lovers. It is so, so good. Highly recommended if you're looking for something light and fun to read. I give it 5 stars. I'm obsessed with it. So check out Book Lovers, it was really good. So that is it for this little book video. These are the books that I read April through June. There were 5, not 4. I'm a silly goose. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do so below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.